Hello, everybody. Welcome to a Week Ahead News Show. It is episode 58. Hope everyone's having a great Monday night. Everyone had a great start to your week. Only one, first day, but hopefully it's not too bad. Thanks everyone for stopping by. It's currently April 13th, 2026. Episode 58 again. Week Ahead News Show here on the Lead Doodle channel with me, Liam, my good friend Tommy.
Hello, everybody. Good to be back. Good to be back.
Make sure I get your audio right, but you sound good on my end, so let me turn you up a little bit. We'll get right into it. Once again, hope everyone's enjoying the content. Make sure you like, subscribe, ring that bell if you want to be notified whenever we go live. And our Facebook is in the description as well. We'll go right into the weather. Today we had a high of 80, hot one today, low of 64. Hopefully everyone went out, but it's cloudy. Tomorrow we actually have a lot of rain, 85% chance, high of 77, low of 62. Wednesday we have thunderstorms, 85% chance, just like on Tuesday. High of 80, high again, probably going to be humid, low of 63. Thursday rain again, 80% chance going to be rainy, 74 high, 61 low. Friday, 90% chance of rain, 68 high, 55 low, never a hot one. Saturday, 60% chance of rain, high of 75, low of 53. And then also it looks like Sunday we have a 75% chance of rain, high of 60, getting a little bit chillier, low of 39. Next Monday partly cloudy, high of 49, low of 35. Our moon is currently in a waning crescent, 15% illumination. Next full moon in 18 days. Our moon rise is at 4:48 a.m. with our moon set at 3:50 p.m. Like I said, 18 days for the next full moon. Sunrise. First light today was at 6:18 a.m. Sunrise today was at 6:46 a.m. Sunset today was at 8 p.m. on the dot. Last light, 8:29 with about 13 hours and 14 minutes of daylight. Getting more daylight, which is great. Tomorrow, about 0.15 inches of rain, about half an inch on Wednesday, 0.1 inch on Thursday, half an inch on Friday and Saturday. So nothing too crazy. Light rain. Tommy will be going in stocks for the last 5 days. We also have stocks above us for today. Looks like minor gains, all in the greens. Also, we have weather below us as well.
Yeah, before I go into the stocks, I just have to say a shame on Google. Shame on Google because they changed the formatting so I can no longer just very simply copy and paste the last 5 days stocks into our internal document. And
Dang Google.
and as I'm sure you can attest, Liam, I love my documents formatted perfectly. Even if this is an internal document, the internal docket, it drives me crazy. If there's just like a blank page in between the stories, I have to get rid of it. So now I got to do extra things. So thank you, Google. But stocks for the last 5 days, the Dow was up 3.15%. The S&P 500 was up 4.31%. The Nasdaq was up 5.73%.
Alright, so big gains with the stocks. Don't know if it's for war, maybe stuff with straight, which we'll be talking about here in a little bit. Maybe oil prices, stuff like that. We'll have to see. Kind of interesting. Any ideas you have, Tom? Why stocks were so good?
No, I mean, so um, they were going. There was of course the ceasefire, and initially there was going to be a full reopening of the Strait of Hormuz as part of that ceasefire. That did not end up happening because depending on who you believe, somebody broke the ceasefire. Looks like it was the Israelis by bombing Lebanon, by continuing to bomb Lebanon, but that is still up in the air depending on who you believe. Um, Depending on who you believe said the terms are. So that didn't end up happening, but that could have, maybe made stocks go up. But then, of course, that all fell through. Shipping got shut down, and peace talks fell through yesterday. So it's all kind of up in the air. But the war has been kind of winding down a little bit, but it certainly has a lot of potential to spike back up, and maybe the stock market was reflecting the cooling period that we saw earlier in the week.
Makes sense. We'll go right into a funny topic. Save some time. It's about Trump's Easter rant. Even Jesus can't get a day for himself. Past week is a good example how modern politics can blur the line between ceremony, campaigning, and controversy, especially with Trump. We see this all the time. Great clips. We see he just rants about anything. It could be a funeral, and Trump will be ranting. Um, Traditionally a light, family-friendly occasion centered on things like egg rolls, kids' activities, and springtime celebration for Easter. Historically, presidents use this moment to project warmth and normalcy, but instead of sticking to that tone, Trump uses opportunity both in remarks and online posts to pivot into much broader and more political message, kind of like he always does. And it's crazy. Make sure you guys watch the clips. Within the same stretch of commentary, he referenced tensions with Iran, criticized political opponents, revisited grievances with past investigations, which is crazy, and made broader claims about the state of the country. The tone shifts were abrupt, moving from hobby symbolism to warnings about international conflict and back again, which is a big part of why the movement got so much attention, and got so much attention. Key figure was the style and kind of how he is. The language, especially how Trump is, was not polished or ceremonial. It was direct, sometimes combative. You like Trump, oh my God, just complaining. It's crazy. He needs to be on some type of medication. And clearly aimed at his political base rather than a general holiday audience and the people there, or all of Americans, which we've seen Biden do many times when he was president. So crazy. The reaction was immediate and predictable. Late-night comedians and commentators framed it as surreal, highlighting the contrast between Easter imagery and talks of war, political retribution. On social media, clips and quotes, like I said, were all over, spread quickly, often stripped of context and turned into memes at the same time, political analysis. Pointing out this kind of message strategy keeps Trump constantly in the spotlight, which is what he likes. He likes to be all online. He likes trending, which is crazy to me. Even during moments where it would be low key. We kind of talked about before. We've seen this before in Trump, and I'm kind of tired of it. But we kind of like his first presidency. We always talk about, oh, what did he post? What did he post? But he's just saying crazy crap now. But he's also doing crazy crap. So I think it's just funny. Something like Easter, even though they say a religious man, he can't be religious about it. He has to be just, oh my God, like a Ken in the Ken and Karen, just be crazy and just yapping. What do you think, Tom?
I'm not surprised. In many respects, this is symbolic of Donald Trump's relationship with Christianity. Donald Trump is a man, that will go out there and pander to the Christian right to get votes, but ultimately, under his breath and in the same sentence, often, will speak of vindictiveness, fire and fury, wiping out a whole civilization. A variety of different things that go directly contrary to the Christian faith. Um, so yeah, I mean, I think just in many ways this is symbolic of his relationship with his God,
Mm.
and talk about sort of the ridiculousness of Trump's Easter um, shenanigans is. I saw on Instagram a post again from the White House, Donald Trump signing some Easter cards, surrounded by kids, and an Easter bunny. And, the post said, no auto pen here or something, like, so again, we're dealing with a White House that will just bring politics and vindictiveness into everything, including Easter. And
Mm.
it just truly is, it's just surprising. It's just surprising that, uh, that people on the right that claim to be so godly and so be in favor of all of the teachings of Christ, how they're totally okay with Donald Trump, mixing religion with their politics and just taking the attention away from the actual holiday and bringing in his vindictiveness into it. It's just crazy. This whole thing's just symbolic of the immaturity of Donald Trump and ultimately his administration. So,
Agreed. Agreed. It's crazy. It is. And, like, vindictive's the right word, and just how he is. It's so much past stuff, and he's talking about, how they couldn't get people that went after him. It's just BS. Time and time again. I don't get it. But it's also, I guess his whole persona. Talk about BS, and they don't focus on how bad you are doing your job. So he's a fake it
yeah.
till you make it type of guy. Are you ready to go on an
Yeah.
international one topic for the day?
Yeah, yeah. So, for context for the viewers, we sort of got two international topics today. One about the peace deal falling through and sort of the process of all of that, and then also we're going to talk about the blockade of Iranian ports. But to start, we'll talk about the no peace deal. So, the United States and Iran held direct face-to-face peace talks in Islamabad, Pakistan, their capital. They were the highest level talks between the two countries in decades, with the goal of ending the ongoing conflict, to stabilize a fragile ceasefire, address nuclear and regional security issues. So for context, I think it's important to kind of rewind a little bit so people understand the full story of how this is all playing out. Um, Going into early last week when we talked about the Donald Trump saying he's going to wipe out an entire civilization, he's going to commit these tremendous war crimes in our name. Um, when he first posted that set off a fury of diplomatic communications between the United States, Israel, and Iran. And initially, it wasn't looking good. Okay, so like the Americans, we submitted a proposal that was very extreme, and the Iranians submitted an equally extreme proposal. Um, so what ended up happening was they were getting to the deadline of this wiping out this civilization, and they basically just sort of agreed to what they wanted to agree to and kind of just ignored what they wanted to ignore. Okay. Um, so nobody seemingly wanted to actually carry through on the threat of wiping out the civilization, and the Iranians took it seriously as they should have. Um, so a ceasefire was reached at that time, which then sort of crumbled, and it sort of naturally crumbled because really there was no clear agreement to begin with. Every party just sort of said, "We agree," and they just sort of walked away and said, "This is what we agree to," and then just sort of ignored other parts of these various proposals. So, but Pakistan, the mediator, um, who was the mediator, did say that the ceasefire did include Israel's attacks into Lebanon. So because of that, because of how fragile this ceasefire was, expectations going into these talks um should have been very low, because really they didn't really even agree on a ceasefire. We're sort of in a pseudo ceasefire, kind of, which is good. We did not end up um, wiping out the civilization of Iran, but there was no sort of broad. There was not even an agreement. We didn't even agree on what we said we agreed on. Like, so we're going into Sunday. Pakistan, like I said, they acted as a key mediator and host of the negotiations. Um, its leaders helped broker that temporary ceasefire that I was just talking about before the talks, and they brought both sides to the negotiating table. So, who was involved? It was the U.S. Delegation, led by J.D. Vance, and the Iranian delegation was led by senior and political leaders and diplomats. I read that we brought over like 300 people as part of these talks. So it was a big deal. Talks were in direct negotiations and mediated discussions with international involvement. So, U.S. demanded Iran must commit to not developing nuclear weapons. Iran's position wants guarantees and protections of its nuclear rights. Strait of Hormuz, key dispute over control over shipping routes, fees or access for international ships. Iran requested release of frozen assets, relief from pressure and sanctions, broader regional ceasefire, including Israel and Hezbollah, which, depending on who you believe, may have already been part of the original ceasefire. So the outcomes of the talks. No agreement was reached after long negotiations. U.S. officials said Iran refused key terms, especially on nuclear negotiations. So after that this was written and I read and prepared for that show, the key terms were actually leaked. Um, the Iranians were offering to freeze their nuclear program for up to 5 years, and the U.S. Minimum was 20. So that was one of the factors why the talks ended up after about a day of full negotiation. U.S. announced plans for a naval blockade, which we'll talk about shortly, and the tensions continue to escalate despite a ceasefire technically being in place. Let's see. So, yeah, this is not like as I was sort of saying, this was not surprising. There was no really there's a ceasefire, but there was no even really common there's no common nexus, I guess, to use a lawyer term. There's no common nexus of thought, between the two parties of, what is actually in this ceasefire. They don't even agree on the agreed upon ceasefire. So it was very, um, questionable to have any sort of high hopes, going into these talks of any sort of real lasting peace. And these talks in themselves, I think illustrate, just unfortunately, that the United States did not achieve so far a lot of its strategic objectives. Where we are pursuing a peace, um, but yet we are pursuing a peace, which is the right move, by the way. but but ultimately, that peace is being pursued without us having actually achieved dismantling the Iranian nuclear program. In fact, all it seems this war achieved was actually bolstering the Iranian regime, bolstering them, giving them the idea of levying tolls on the Strait of Hormuz. The whole Strait of Hormuz situation is still very much up in the air for much debate. We're not going to know anything about that for a long time. So, um, the talks, I think, were probably never going to succeed. They illustrate the fact that Donald Trump doesn't know what he's doing, that he got us into a war where our service members unfortunately have passed away, and leaves us in a worse geopolitical situation than when we started the war. So it's just crazy to me. Um, it just shows that the entirety of the United States' foreign policy when it comes to the Middle East is just nonsensical. It makes no sense. And it's just driven by something other than logic. So, as I'll go into after we take a brief break here from the Iran conflict, I'll go into the blockade that followed. But for now, what do you think, Liam? What do you think about this disaster?
Yeah, it's just crazy because like we kind of know before. We had deals before with certain countries in the past. Iran, right, with a nuclear deal.
Yeah.
Um, so it's kind of dumb that we're still dealing with this 10 years later. Probably even longer now. Um, so, and especially how Trump is in this area, he's not being right. If Trump started off by lying, saying that they were talking when they weren't, or at least they saying that both sides were lying, maybe. So we kind of already knew from the start it wasn't going to be that good. And like Tommy said, Israel did break for truce, so it's not going to make them too happy. I just kind of hope that it gets kind of solved pretty quickly, but I know it's not, because I know we're going to keep selling them weapons of mass destruction, and bombs and just military equipment. But it's just both sides shouldn't really be fighting, and we should be fighting in this, and we're going to keep seeing us fighting in this. So,
I'm glad you mentioned, because you said the Iranian, you said we've been talking about this for 10 years. You were referring to the Iranian nuclear program, the Iranian nuclear deal, I imagine. The talks, the peace deal that comes out of this, the position of the Iranian government right now is way worse for us than the terms that they agreed to under Obama. But Donald Trump
mm,
ripped that up and said
yep,
this is soft on Iran and it's going to lead to nuclear annihilation. And then he launched a war that emboldened them. Okay.
yep. Like we had
Sorry to cut
people
you off
looking
there a
at their
little bit.
nuclear programs. It's so dumb. We had watchdogs, you know what I mean? We had limits for them.
Yeah.
Just like you're saying, it's Trump's going full circle. It kind of shows that how useful. I mean, not useful, useless. Sorry. Especially his second presidency is. He's just chasing his tail. A lot of his stuff. You know, Epstein. This not dealing with this too well. It's affecting our bottom line. You know, like we talked about before. They're saying gas prices like fee increase. Since this is like bigger than it even was in wartime. So not wartime. Sorry. In the 70s. During the crisis then. So I mean, it's kind of just crazy in my opinion. They better figure out a solution fast because I don't want to, you know, men on our side dying over BS over there, getting shot down or planes hitting each other. So we'll keep talking about that. And if a blockade's interesting as well too, because I guess there have been oil tankers that have made it across. I don't know if they've paid the money and then you know that gets pushed down to us.
Yeah.
It's gonna be interesting. Gas is already expensive, so I'm ready to go on up. Oh, sorry, you can go real quick.
Yeah, I was gonna say real quick. You know, you're talking very briefly about the blockade. You know, there's like 3 different blockade. You know, depending on like the U.S. is like you got to register with us to get through. The Iranians are like you got to register with us to get through. Like, you know, like it's just crazy.
Yeah, it's probably just a crazy area right now. And I don't think like us doing naval blockades against them and all these big ideas, it's just dumb. You know what I mean? Over time, how effective they'll be, I don't know. Probably not. And it's just can get done diplomatically. So we'll have to see. On National One topic is more Artemis news because they came back. So basically 9 highlights from the epic journey around the moon. It was launched on April 1st from Kennedy Space Center. Sent 4 astronauts aboard NASA's Orion spacecraft on a 10-day journey around the moon back to Earth. Had a flawless liftoff, which is good to see. It was making it first time NASA's Space Launch System, or SLS, rocket carried astronauts. This alone was a major achievement, which is pretty cool, as both rocket and spacecraft have never previously flown with a crew. There was a critical testing during the first 24 hours. The crew remained in Earth's orbit to test a lot of the life support systems, navigation, and manual controls. This is crucial because about 90% of Orion's life support systems were being tested in space for the first time. They verified oxygen, water, and carbon dioxide removal systems before heading into deeper space. They were all confirmed safe, and NASA did give the go to the moon. We have the first user for moon in decades, not seen by humans in over 50 years, which is really cool to see, as well as Earth, as they were going away from it. These images were the most iconic moments of the mission, so make sure you go online and look at those as well. Going to the moon took about 4 days, during which astronauts conducted experiments, communicated with Earth, even celebrated holidays like Easter, you know, Jesus risen, Trump talking about it. I think Trump talked to him too, and there's photos of them not too happy about that, so that's funny. Look those up as well. This phase highlighted the human side of space travel, which is always awesome, not just the technical side. There was record-breaking lunar flyby. The mission's most important moment came as the spacecraft looped around the far side of the moon. The milestone set new record distance farthest humans has ever traveled from Earth, about 252,756 miles. They experienced about 40 minutes of total communication blackout. I believe we talked about that last Monday as well. While behind the moon, became one of the first few missions ever to see the moon's far side directly, and demonstrated how they could travel into deep space, especially places like that. During the flyby, astronauts also captured once-in-a-lifetime visuals, including a solar eclipse seen from space as they were on the other side of the moon. Details from the moon's surface, including craters and terrain never before seen this way. Astronauts described the experience as almost impossible to put into words, showing just how unique these moments were. Some emotional moments too. Astronauts described Earth as watching Earth disappear as they went behind the moon. Silence during the communication blackout was a powerful sense of isolation, and the crew members also reflected on humanity's place in the universe as they were doing as well, which is interesting. Then they had a safe return back to Earth. After circling the moon, they returned to speeds for Earth about 24,000 miles per hour, enduring extreme heat, during re-entry, basically around 500 degrees Fahrenheit on their heat shields. And that also had a brief communications blackout as the capsule deployed its parachutes, and they ended up safely splashing down in the Pacific. And there was, I believe, an aircraft carrier going to pick them up. For the landing, successful landing, proved that NASA systems are basically ready for future missions, going to the moon, which we should be excited to see, getting that lunar base ready. What it means for the future is a test for future space exploration. Set stage for Artemis 3, which will be testing docking systems and prepping for landing. Artemis 4, which will be our first trip to return humans to the moon. And like I said, long-term goal was like building a lunar base and eventually sending humans to Mars. And if the lunar base would kind of be like a gas station to get to Mars, which would be really interesting. I'm excited. Oh, sorry. All of it's kind of been really excited to see. Like CNN has been streaming a lot of it. There was a lot of people like YouTube streaming on it, on like NASA's YouTube. I've been watching a lot, so a lot of good stuff to watch during it as well. Like a lot of good like 3D kind of guess how they show you what it kind of looks like. As along with the photos and with all the new tech, it's nice to see and better res. So nice to see. Happy they all came back safe, especially on America's 250, which we'll be talking about in a local topic too. Good thing for America. So happy to see NASA doing something, finally getting back to the moon. What do you think, Tom?
I agree. I think it's amazing. I watched the splashdown. It was very cool to see. It's just amazing. You have that lunar capsule that just flew around the whole Earth and is going 20 some thousand miles per hour, and how it can just slowly drift back down to and hit the water at, like they were saying, 19 miles an hour. Like, it's just all amazing to me. Like, me just being so out of the realm as like I'm so much not a STEM person. I'm like, huh? Like, how does this work? I don't know, and I'm just amazed by it, and it's very cool to see. Something I strongly support. I like to see that NASA and the federal government is funding this, and I think it's good for the country, for humanity at large, for science when we push and have sort of ambitious goals in space. So happy to see
Agreed.
that we're taking this seriously. Happy to see that everyone made it home safe, and it's good to see. It's good to see.
And hopefully Trump keeps funding NASA because that's a big issue right now that we're hearing for the
Yeah.
future. And I think this might help it out because like people might be really mad at Trump if, especially after all this hype. They get cut in fundings. I mean they always have. But we need to get to the moon, especially to have some government aspect tied to it. And not this all private guys. So it was really nice to see. A lot of history tied to it too. If you like the Apollo missions and history like that, I always say like if you like watching space stuff, For All Mankind's a really good space show on Apple TV. So watch that. That's really it for me on this one. Tommy can go into international two topic.
Yeah.
The Iranian blockade and stuff we'll talk about as well. So thanks, Tom.
So this is just kind of like part two of our first talk about the peace deal. So we've sort of gone over how the ceasefire was built upon shaky grounds, how the parties really didn't agree, and then we've talked about how that sort of false conception, that's what was going into the peace talks over the week, and that ultimately failed. So that ultimately, leaves the United States and the world at an inflection point. So, I have read and I have heard that the United States, is interested, seemingly in a second round of talks, and seemingly, maybe there will be some areas where compromises could be made. So there is still a possible diplomatic solution to this, but following the failure of the U.S. Iran peace talks in Islamabad, um, the U.S. Under Donald Trump announced a naval blockade of Iranian ports. The blockade targets Iranian shipping specifically and allows non-Iranian ships to pass through the Strait of Hormuz under monitoring. So the goal is to pressure Iran to reopen the strait and agree to a ceasefire and peace deal. So as we've already talked about, the strait is one of the most influential, is one of the most critical global oil routes. About 20% of the world's oil passes through it. Disruptions there immediately affect global energy and prices. The blockade comes after 6+ weeks of war between U.S., Israel, and Iran. The conflict began with U.S.-Israeli strikes on Iran February 28, 2026, targeting military and nuclear sites. Since then, thousands have been killed. Fighting has spread throughout the region. The peace talks broke down, as we talked about before. Key disagreements over nuclear program, sanctions relief, and war-related demands, and control over the Strait of Hormuz. And the failure of these talks led directly to the blockade decision. So, before I continue, the first thing to realize about the blockade is the fact that it has not been demonstrated that the United States right now has the ability to actually facilitate a blockade in the way that is being presented to the American people right now. And let me be clear about that. So, there's no doubt in my mind. There is no doubt in my mind, for instance, that the United States Navy could stop every single ship from leaving from leaving and entering the Strait of Hormuz that is going to Iran. There's not a doubt in my mind that we could do that. That we could shut down all or most of Iranian shipping. That is likely true, given the resources that we have in the region, etc. But what is not true is the claim that the blockade would allow non-Iranian ships to pass through the Strait of Hormuz under monitoring. So, essentially, right now, the Iranians have unleashed a regime where they are saying, you have to register with us to go through the Strait of Hormuz. You have to register with us to go through the Strait of Hormuz. You have to cooperate with our military. You have to pay us a toll of, it was, a significant toll based on like per ship and like per barrel of oil. So the Iranians saying you got to register with them, and then we're saying you got to work with us. So that seems like a situation that is going to create gridlock, and all we have seen so far out of the Strait of Hormuz since this war began is gridlock. Say what you want about Iran, its regime, its nuclear program. The Iranians were able to close down the Strait of Hormuz. Okay, you can't take that away from them. They were able to exercise enough control over the strait that they were able to effectively shut it down and affect global oil prices. So why was that true a week ago, but not true today when we announce a blockade, which with its two purposes going to be to reopen the strait, and to stop Iranian shipping. Maybe we can stop Iranian shipping, but nothing that I have seen and nothing that has been demonstrated to me or the American public has shown that, as currently things stand, we have the ability to reopen the Strait of Hormuz with the resources we have and with the resources that we are willing to, launch. So, Iran, they ultimately condemned the blockade as piracy, issued threats, possible attacks on regional ports and infrastructure, saying we're going to attack, Gulf nations' ports, that go around the strait, warned of serious retaliation, raising risk of further escalation. Oil prices surged near above $100 per barrel. Market reacted with stock declines, increased inflation concerns. Tankers have already turned around or avoided the region. Maritime traffic in the strait has dropped significantly. Allies like UK, France, and Turkey are pushing for renewed diplomacy. And as I talked about at the beginning, that could be possible. There may be some interest in a second round of talks. And maybe even a possible multinational effort to keep shipping lanes open. The temporary ceasefire is in place till April 22nd. If you could even call it a ceasefire, like I've even talked about. But the risks include full-scale isolation if the blockade is enforced aggressively or if Iran retaliates. So, bottom line, the U.S. has escalated the conflict by blockading Iranian ports. The move follows failed peace talks and aims to force concessions. It raises the risks of a wider war and global economic shock. And the situation, I would say now, could fairly be described as at a critical turning point between diplomacy and major escalation. So we're going to have to kind of keep an eye on, that's sort of all I had to say, but we have to keep an eye on, what sort of path is going to be taken following the failure of this first round of talks. Or is it going to be increased escalation? Is it going to be, stuff like the blockade or even a return to hostilities? Or is it going to be, or further return to hostilities, I should say? Or is there going to be some sort of diplomatic solution? The one thing that I will say about the diplomatic solution, what it's got going for it, is I've read that the Iranians are very influenced by the Chinese, and the Chinese are known to wanting stability in the region. They probably want that straight open as well, to some extent. So Iran may have some pressure put on them. It's been reported that that's what led them to agree to the ceasefire, so-called agree to the ceasefire to begin with. And then domestically here in the United States, of course, we have, the upcoming midterm elections, the fact that the House is likely gone for Republicans and the Senate's certainly in play when it shouldn't be. So there is a potential avenue for diplomacy, and both sides are going to be under pressure. But also, with the first rounds having failed, with the ceasefire being on shaky ground, we're just going to have to wait and see how this unfolds. But certainly, these next couple days, this next week is going to be very, very interesting for the region. So,
It sounds
what
like
do you
it,
have to
Tom.
say, Liam?
Thanks for all that input. Especially how it is on lives. Thousands of lives lost over there. Tens, hundreds,
Yeah.
maybe even thousands of our own soldiers' lives lost over there. It's interesting. So, definitely need this to stop quick. We can't really deal with how it's affecting our economy. So, hopefully, like we said, the ceasefire it's set to expire, but we already feel like it broke, so it doesn't matter the next 9 days. It's dumb.
Well, believe me, it could break worse.
Yep, true. And especially like how Trump is, it's like you can't like expect to like bomb the crap out of people and then be like, hey, let's do deals. Like it's kind of crazy, like a crazy thought logic. So just dumb, in my opinion. With Trump, the escalation itself is sad, but that input's good. So.
Yeah, and this is a story where it's kind of like a warning story, like what's gonna happen next, like.
Yeah, especially how you
hopefully
started
it's
it. Like I
good.
appreciate that. Like that's interesting. So.
Yeah.
All right, a little bit
pretty much all
more
I-
fun topic for our last topic, or local one topic for the night. It's basically about Warren America 250 events. I also have a summary of Warren and Girard coming up at the end. A local effort is underway in Warren as city leaders officially show support for nationwide America 250 celebration, marking the 250th anniversary of the United States in 2026. During a recent city council meeting, officials passed a resolution to join the America 250 initiative. I'm kind of late for it, but maybe that's just how it is. The America 250 celebration, also known as the United States Semi-Quincentennial, will be on July 4th, 2026, and includes events happening across the country to reflect America's past and future. Key voice at the meeting was Cory Delgado, who emphasized the importance of honoring generations of veterans who have defended the country over the past 250 years. She encouraged everyone to take an active role, making a celebration meaningful for the community. Mayor Doug Franklin, who expressed strong support, highlighted the collaborative work already happening behind the scenes and encouraging a community-wide involvement for the upcoming events. Efforts about a regional push as well. Trumbull County commissioners have already proved similar support in local organizations, from libraries to historical societies. We're planning events, exhibits, and educational programs throughout 2026, which will be interesting to see. A quick, summary. Early 2026 will be time varies for Warren Trumbull County Public Library. It's educational programs throughout games throughout history, stuff like that. Community engagement kickoff events. Look it on them social media. This is Trumbull History Challenge for January through December. It's self-paced, countrywide. So Warren and Gerard. Families visit historical sites, all accounts, all across the townships. So not really fixed schedule. You can do it at your own pace. That's kind of cool. There's monthly themed county events through Trumbull County, and each month has a theme: arts, outdoors, veterans, etc. And driving local, rotating local events, which would be kind of cool to see. There's some museums and tour exhibits as well going all throughout the year. At Packard, which would be cool to see, auto history exhibits tied to America 250 themes. I'll probably have to see that. Historical home tours throughout the year at Harriet Taylor Upton House, which is about women's suffrage and local history programming as well. John Stark Edward House throughout the whole year, or early settler history and Western Reserve heritage after John Stark Edward House. We have some arts and cultural events, basically in May. Time to be determined. Multiple venues throughout the Warren area. There's concerts, theater, museum exhibits, and performances, so look out for that. In June 2026, we have outdoor rec events, parks and trails countywide, activities like trails at West Reserve, Greenway, and parks, so look out for that. Then we have the summertime, July 4th, 2026. So Independence Day, Warren, Gerard countywide major celebrations, picnics, fireworks. Be probably huge this year. We have a student showcase and Future America project in fall 2026. Students' projects imagining the future for U.S. displayed publicly. In November, we have veterans recognition events. Countywide, ceremonies honoring veterans and first responders, which would be cool to see. So all throughout the year we have stuff happening, but probably the biggest time will be around the 4th of July. So excited for that. Hopefully Warren and Gerard, all the areas around this Niles, have a good planning for everything. A lot of times they always do, especially in the summer. I gotta sneeze 1 second. Oh, I lied. Maybe it might be coming. Oh, it's coming. Dang it. But that's really it for me on that one. I'm really excited for all the events happening. Like I said, Packard will be fun. A lot of this veteran stuff's kind of cool. Learning about kids, going outside. I love going outside, so that'd be kind of cool. Arts and culture. Oh, now it's finally coming. I'm going to sneeze real quick. Tommy, give your opinion on this while I sneeze.
Here we go. Okay, yeah, go sneeze. So I'm happy to see that there's so many great local events happening. I'm celebrating America's 250th anniversary. My only reservation, I just wish we had a different president, but other than that, I'm happy to see that, everything is going good, that there's going to be all these events, celebrating the 250th anniversary of the United States. So great to see. Done sneezing?
Yep. I ended up just blowing it out. We're good. All right, so that's really for us. Yeah, not too long of an episode. 51 minutes, kind of long. I really appreciate everyone stopping by. I had a good amount of views today, so I appreciate that. If everyone could drop a like, that'd really help us out with that YouTube algorithm. Me and Hunter will be back here Thursday for the Northeast Ohio Sports Show at 8:30. Same time we do this show. With spring coming, we'll bring a Healthy Living back with Trevor too. Look out on our Facebook in our description as well for whenever that'll be coming up. We tend to post whenever we go live. Once again, thank you everyone for coming to the Week Ahead News Show with me, Liam, my good friend Tommy. Make sure to stop by next week if you enjoyed the content. That's really it for me. Good night, Youngstown.
Good night, everybody.